So, you know, the different tools that we're going to use, and then also, you know, if we get time, and I don't know if we'll get time, maybe this is a whole different subject for a different meeting, but talk about pipe networks and how you actually create those shortcuts that you would use in a profile or in a drawing where you're going to be using the data, you know, to be designing, say, an electrical line or a transmission line or a gas line for existence. Examples, not existence. The different types of utilities, you know, they're broken out into two different types. Wet utilities, obviously. You have the storm drain, then you have sewer, and there's two different types of sewer lines. There's collection and there's transmission. And believe it or not, there are major transmission lines within the city of San Diego, and transmission lines, basically anything over 15 to 18, depending on the city size, in diameter. So those, they tend not to have laterals off of. Okay, so a transmission, you're not going to have the laterals and the connections that are made to those lines as a normal course. You know, every once in a while you get one. You know, never say never. But with water, you also have the distribution and transmission. Just like in electrical, you have distribution and transmission. The flow of electricity is much like the flow of water. You have different types of water, both reclaimed and water lines, but reclaimed is treated more like a sewer for public health standards. So anybody here know what the minimum distance is between a water and a sewer line?
10 feet.
10 feet, what?
Outside diameter.
Right, so it's from edge to edge, okay? That's not 10 feet center to center, it's 10 feet edge to edge. What's the absolute minimum that you can go without actually getting the permission of the state health board? Anybody know?
6 inches.
6 feet. Okay. You can go down to 6 feet with the permission of the municipality or the water agency. But below 6 feet, you actually have to go to the state. Okay? So electrical lines, you know, there's different types of electrical lines. We have traffic signal, loops, distribution, transmission, telephone, obviously, cable TV, fiber optic communications. Now, fiber optic's a little bit different animal, and typically those cannot be cut because you know what happens when you knock into a fiber optic line. It's kind of like opening spaghetti. So these are all the dry utilities. These are all the wet utilities. Now, typically, you know, unless the system's pressurized, you know, these are gravity and really can't go uphill unless you've got some kind of pressurized water system. Reclaimed waters are usually pressurized. Force mains are usually pressurized. Okay. Now, a force main's a little bit different animal. It's a transmission. They treat it like a transmission main. But these are the different types. And I think I covered everything, but somebody will always come up with something new. So, you know, what do we use in drawing the different utilities? Okay, we're going to be using topo. Okay, we're going to be using the utility base maps from the utilities themselves, which look something like this. A little bit of hieroglyphics. You're going to have to actually get the key map to actually read some of this. But there is data you know, written along the lines. And, you know, if we were to zoom in on just this portion right here, if we could read it, okay, you would be able to see that there's different kinds of lines, and also that they have information about how deep it's buried, what type of duct bank it is, how many ducts are actually in the bank. Okay, so when you get the information, all of this is there. You just have to know how to read it. Okay, typically there is something that is given along with this data, and all of this data is usually stored by Kitty in a directory that's known as the utility research directory. So I copied this out of a particular research directory, but you know, so we got research from AT&T, research from Cox, okay? Let's see. Research from the electric company, okay? From gas. So as you can see, each of these companies have base maps. Now, the problem with some of the base maps have been to date is that a lot of the electric, telephone, gas, and the dry utility base maps have been more of a cartoon, okay, than an actual base map. They do give you information about the number of ducts, the type of wire that's in there, the type, not that it matters, but unless you're doing the design for the electrical. But they also give you how many ducts, is it encased, you know, where does it run to? So you know approximately what structure to what structure that it runs to. It also has all the structure names on it, okay? Only important if you're doing an electrical job for the electrical work, or only important for gas if you're doing the gas work. But depending on who you're doing the topo for, the symbols are going to change a little bit, okay? There's this whole set of symbols that you use. Oh, come on. Go back where I was. So there's a whole set of symbols, whether you're in the county or the city or you're drawing for an agency. So they each have their own set of standards, okay? And I said this the last meeting, you know, where we had a lunch and learn. If you're doing something for a particular municipality, a particular agency, you know, if we're doing stuff for SDG&E, SDG&E has a standard for everything, okay? Most things are not done without a standard, right? If you're working for SoCal Gas, same thing. If you're working for Helix Water District or the city of San Diego, each of them have their own set of standards, okay? And it goes for water and sewer and any dry utility as well.
Are all these, standards? I know, like City of San Diego has theirs online, but do you request these standards if it's a district like?
Most of the standards are online.
Are they online? Okay.
Okay. Most of the regional standards are there. However, some of the city standards are not online, and you actually have to go buy, like the city of El Cajon. Theirs aren't on the web yet. Okay. They're working on it, but they haven't got there yet. Escondido, Oceanside, they all have their standards that they use. Each of them have a municipality water district that they each have their own water district standards as well. So when you're drawing something, pay attention to the standards that you're drawing. What I wanted to do was, pass this around. This is a good representation of what a manhole looks like, okay? I wanted to pass it around so everybody kind of gets an idea One of the nice things about this is that usually the manhole is located at the eccentric portion of the manhole is located at the outlet, the downhill side. Okay? Now, some agencies like it like this, so you have to look at the standard and figure it out. But each agency has its own standard. Okay? Now, the other thing you can do is you can look at some of the surveyor's notes, because the surveyors will tell you which way the manhole is, which shot they shot, okay? Which dip is where, so there's an inlet, and an outlet, okay? So they'll give you this inlet, and this outlet, and tell you which direction the outlet is. They usually draw a sketch with a north arrow and show you where the stuff's coming from. This one's an 8-inch, and that one's a 6-inch, and this is a 10-inch going out, okay? Their notes are pretty good. So that's another source of information, is notes from the surveyors. Survey shots, survey surface features, surface feature being a manhole, surface feature being a valve cover, okay? Another surface feature might be a backflow preventer, okay? That's something you'll see in the topo, okay? It won't necessarily be in the mapping that you get from the municipality or the water agency. However, you do know that that's a point for a service, okay? And so you'll know that there has to be some kind of lateral that comes off the main line to come to that service. And I'll get to that when I start doing the drawing. But then, you know, one of the other things that we have in our arsenal of drawing these things is pothole information, where we actually go out and, you know, pothole the crossing. This is later on in the design, but you'll have this information too, as well as the survey of the utility markup. Again, I'm saying the survey notes are a good source of some of that data that you just don't have anywhere else, okay? So ASC 3802 is kind of a standard guideline for the levels of quality for utility information, okay? Level A is basically a pothole, where you've actually exposed the line, surveyed the location, you know where that is in three-dimensional space, okay? B is everything short of a pothole. Maybe you have some paint marking on the surface, as well as the surface features themselves, okay? So that's level B. Now, most of our electrical jobs are either level A at the crossing and level B generally. However, some other jobs that, you know, maybe the scope is not utility, the scope is sidewalk, okay? We're just showing the information to be showing the information. Some of the level of information might be B or C even, where you're actually, you have survey of the utility information, okay? But you have the plan that actually built the object, okay? That's level C. And the survey information agrees with, you know, the plan that the as-built is you're putting it in with, okay? Level D is basically you have a plan that shows it on it and it's referenced on there, or you have somebody that told you, yeah, it's 15 feet off of this line, okay? It's, you know, you only have that anecdotal information, okay? So level D is kind of like the lowest level. I have here a checklist, and you guys can pass them down. In here is a checklist for an electrical job. However, it can translate to any job, okay? Essentially, what you're looking at is one of the checklist points is on this feature right here, what is your information for your project generally? And what's the information like at your crossing? Okay, so if you're designing a feature, a pipeline, a water line, a sewer line, an electrical line, okay, generally what's the information that you have, okay, for your utilities? And I concentrate a lot on the utilities, okay? The other thing is north arrow. That's always important. But what level of information do you have? You have C, and then crossings you have B, or do you have something more than that? So let's say you have survey information, and you're calculating what the crossing is. What level of information would that be at? I'm looking for an answer. I'm not going to speak everything. Okay, so you have survey of, say, a storm drain. You got this inlet, that manhole. And you're calculating where your crossing is. What level of information is that? Huh? B. That's correct. So that information is, you don't actually have it exposed, but you have the next best thing. You have survey information on both sides of it, and it's a straight line between them. Okay? Now, one of the things that I'm going to ask is, especially for the power group, is that you guys fill out this checklist. I'm going to pass around this checklist and one I have for transmission. Okay? We'll probably modify this a little bit for gas, but the idea is that this be filled out before you give it to me. So they're filled out by hand. I don't want any computer-generated stuff where you just kind of check it off rapidly and randomly. I want you to actually check it off. Okay? So filled out by hand, signed by you, saying, I checked all this stuff. Okay? Because 9 times out of 10, what I'm looking at when I'm looking at a QC is I'm looking at information that wasn't plotted correctly. Telephone manhole that wasn't plotted at all, just drawn, from basically from manhole to manhole, and not shown any other way. Electrical lines, the substructure wasn't even really drawn. So that's what I'm trying to hit on. You guys have to draw the substructures. You have to draw the substructure for this storm drain as well as the electrical line.
So I think one big issue with, at least for example, for us at XPQ with our existing utilities, is that not until like later in the game we miss like a bunch of sewer laterals. But I know a part of that is because we didn't actually have all of the information. So how do we, with this checklist, it's like, even if you did this checklist, unless we have factual plans for everything, we wouldn't even be able to find it because we didn't even have it.
If you have a household, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You know that somewhere in that property frontage, there's a sewer lateral. And if you have a survey shot on the downhill manhole and the uphill manhole, you have a good idea of where that sewer line is in the street. You bump up, and this is a rough number, 1.2 up from the main, because that's typically what it is for an 8-inch main, 1.2 feet from the main, and head up to the property line at 2%, that's where the lateral will be. Okay? Now, are you going to be right in there? No, but you'll be close, and you'll know that there's some kind of lateral somewhere in that property frontage, usually in the driveway. Okay? They're usually in the driveway, somewhere in the driveway, but usually in the driveway. Okay? Or just off the side of it. Okay? A lot of times the newer subdivision, there's actually an S in the curb where the sewer lateral is. Okay? And the surveyors will pick that up, and they'll have it written in their notes, S in curb. Okay? W in curb. That's where the water lateral is.
I haven't seen one of those in years. S and curve.
The the new stuff in Chula Vista, yes.
I haven't seen it collected by survey.
Well, they should collect. Okay?
But yeah, like I'm just trying to make sure that we prevent at least that particular issue as much as possible.
Well, and how many people know how deep a water lateral is? Huh? I got 3 feet here. Who else? 4 feet? 3 feet? Any other takers?
I think it's gonna be higher.
Okay, so how much higher?
But it's like 2 feet.
If they were installing it correctly, 3 feet. However, most of the laterals are at 30 inches.
Yeah, that's up.
Okay? What's the minimum for an electrical line? Just an average electrical line, street lights, traffic signals.
That's like what-
Hmm?
That's what-
30 inches. That's what it should be. Okay? I've seen them as shallow as 18 inches. Okay? But usually that's an unusual thing. If you see a communication line at a lip of gutter, what does that mean? Right. Also, it also means that it may in fact be only 6 inches deep. Okay? There was a practice back in the 80s that a couple of utility companies did, and what they did was bury transite pipe at 6 inches deep, and that's where their lines went. Okay? And it's right at the curb line. So if you see something there, it's best to investigate what's there, because typically it's either going to be some kind of electrical or some kind of communication line. Okay. The other thing is, what's the first thing on that checklist? Site visit, right? No, on the big one.
Let the designer walk the job.
As the designer, walk the job. Okay? Why do I put that on there? Huh?
It's important.
It's important. And the reason it's important is when you're out there, you see trenches in the pavement. You see a patch, you know what's going on, or at least know something was going on there. You see a new meter set. You see someone has a new driveway, or you see there's new utilities in where you don't have utilities. Okay? In other words, somebody's come in and put a whole brand new utility and you don't have any plans for it. Okay? Those are the kinds of things you see in a job well.
Also, it might be like a change in development, it's like.
Right. Or maybe say somebody's come in and developed something and you don't have the plans for it. Okay? So those are the kinds of things you pick up on a job walk. You should have gone to the job, not Google, but actually gone to the job. Okay? Now Google's a good thing. However, you should actually get to the job site at least once. Okay? Now some of these job sites are rather remote, so it makes it tough, but it's important to actually go to the job site. Okay? And that's why it's number 1 on that second sheet. Okay? The first sheet's all about the title sheet. Okay? The last sheet's all about more of the conduit diagrams and a couple other things that are more pertinent to, say, a transmission or a distribution building 5 drawing. Okay? So with that, we've kind of gone over this a little bit, but what I want to do is actually bring up a drawing and kind of show you where things are and how we get certain things done. So taskbar. So in an AutoCAD drawing, when you get topo, you normally get something like this. Okay? This is with the EXTO and the EXMA already referenced in. Okay? And you're going to get information, that looks like this, and you're going to have to decipher the best you can. You might also notice that. Stop it. You might also, see information that you didn't see, transmission mains or whatever it is that you're not seeing in your field walk or in your field notes even, okay? So the other piece of that information that comes in that we talked about was survey data. So a lot of times you'll have survey data. So we'll reload that. But it won't necessarily all be complete. And this is a lot of times what happens is you'll get a whole lot of survey data around where you're working, but not a whole lot of survey data elsewhere. Okay? That's where you'll have to use drawing plans, other kinds of information that are available to you. Where do I find this information? Is what one of the questions I get a lot. Come on. There's usually a utility research folder. Okay? I stole this out of one of my old jobs, so bear with me for a second. There's a utility research folder, and then also in the survey folder under office data, there's usually job notes, okay? And they'll have put notes in their file about the survey that they did, where it was from, what they did from what day to what day. A lot of the surveyors are pretty good about giving you notes. Say, this is shot 52, this is shot 53, this one's 50, 51. So you have good notes, and also here's survey notes that are pertinent to your drawing, and they said, something about the markout. Okay? So it's something to note. Every surveyor is a little different. Some of them drawn by hand, they just scan them in. This one took a little bit of time, made a PDF. Okay? But that information is there. Okay? And when they see something out in the field, a lot of times they'll take a picture of it. And what I was trying to do is get to it. No, didn't. But here's where, he drew in something at one of the ends of this, and he, gave you shots on it, told you what was going on. You saw some exposed, utilities, so he took shots on them. So you actually have more information than you think you have just by looking at the survey notes. Okay? So a lot of times it'll be a PDF. A lot of times it'll just be a PDF with a scan of their notes. So you sometimes have to go digging for it a little bit. Okay? So this is the same one, I think. But they added some notes to it. So again, you have to look in different areas to find the actual field notes. But here, they're pretty good about putting them in. They actually give you a point listing. Okay? So you actually have the point listing. You can go back through their notes and through the notes of the utilities. Okay? So you've got utility owner telling you certain things. You've got surveyors telling you certain things. Your job as a designer is to bring all that together and give a representation on the drawing that makes sense. Okay? So you're going out of this structure, coming out and going into this structure. Don't you think it helps if you actually draw the structure, maybe? A lot of times, I don't even get the drawn structure. I just get manhole to manhole. Okay? So, what's the difference in drawing manhole to manhole? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, come on. Okay, I got two manholes here, and I see from the plans that, it's a storm drain. So I'm just going to connect these manholes with a storm drain. What's the difference between just connecting the manholes from the storm drain and actually looking at the plan and seeing what the structure is? Okay, if you were just to draw, a line from here to here, what would you have missed? No, it's a little more intense than that. Come on. You would have missed the fact that this is actually an A10. Okay? Come on. There it is. You would have missed that this is an A10 and this is a 96-inch storm drain. Okay? So you would have drawn a line from this manhole to this manhole, but it would have been actually just the edge of the pipe. Okay? The pipe is 8 foot in diameter, and you only drew the edge. Okay? That's what I mean about getting into knowing what the pipe actually is, or knowing what the information that you're drawing actually is. I'm remoting into my computer, so it doesn't always behave. Or sometimes there's lag. So let's zoom in here a little bit. Okay. Now, what's wrong with this picture? They aren't online. Would that be accurate if those lines were 16 inches in diameter? It would be if they were using butterfly valves, because the line actuator is actually on the side of the line. This is where it pays to draw both sides of the pipe, okay, on anything over 16 inches in diameter. Okay? If you draw both sides of the pipe, I know that SDG doesn't like to see them. Turn them in no plot, but have them in your drawing. Okay. The other thing is, what I would do is in construction notes, I would say left off, drawing reclaimed water, at your day's end. Okay. Because maybe tomorrow comes and there's a fire drill and you get pulled off the job and you don't know where you left off, okay? Because you come back to it a week later. That never happens, right? So you say, I left off here and we need to go, complete the picture from here to here. So I might draw in construction layer, I might say, missing this area, okay? So it gives a note to whoever picks it up, because it may not be you, okay? Leave notes in the construction layers. Leave notes at a bare minimum in depth points, okay? Does everybody here know what depth points layer is? Okay, it's a no plot layer. However, it's kind of tricky when it gets referenced in, it ends up on 0. Does everybody know that? Okay? And it's hard to get rid of. So it's easier to put your notes on a construction note layer. And if you want, you could say construction note utilities, and if you get really crazy about it, you could do a layer for every utility. Don't. Please don't. Just put some notes on a construction note layer, okay? So that you know, A, where the information came from, okay? Came from this plan, you know, D2638 sheet set out of the set, okay? Input on this date from here, okay? Then you can put a note that says, oh, found later plan on such and such, and it changes this to this, okay? So that when somebody else goes into this drawing, or somebody brings it up, they go, oh, that's what's going on. Why does this utility line take a 90-degree turn right here, okay? Because they found something in their way, and they couldn't move it, all right? If that information isn't conveyed, then somebody thinks there's something wrong with the drawing, okay? And again, you may not be here, you may be out in the field doing another field walk for another job. Somebody sits here for 4 hours figuring out why this is why it is, okay? So leave some notes in the drawings, you know? And I said, draw the substructures. Did everybody know that we already have substructures already drawn? Does everybody know where they're at? Okay. If we go to the side menus, if I can get there, okay. Oh, my tool palettes are empty. Oh, lovely. Anyways, in tool palettes, they will be here, okay? And there's a tool palette for storm drain. There's a tool palette for sewer. There's a tool palette for electrical, telephone. There's existing and proposed for all of those, okay? Not existing, proposed telephone, because we don't do telephone design. But we do have the existing, how many people here know what a 3316 is? Okay, manhole, all right? That's only what SDG classifies as a handhole. Okay? Manholes are a way bit bigger. Okay, so the 3325s, or the 3327s. Okay, so those. Am I talking Greek to half the class? Did everybody understand that? So know the standards that you're drawing to, okay? In these books, in chapter 3300, there's a page for 3316, 3350, 3313, okay? 3312, okay? Notice that they're all 33s, because that's for underground structures, okay? There's a whole chapter just for overhead structures, okay? There's a whole chapter for the stuff that goes on top of the underground structures, right? Now, when surveyors take their shots, and the shots don't come up square, what do you guys do? You just trace around the outside of them? But they're not square. So what do? Redraw a square, or actually draw the structure itself. You know that the structure is pretty close to being a 3315. Draw a 3315 in there. There's actually a sidebar menu where you can just go grab one. Okay? Now, why are the structures, those points, not square? I talked to a couple surveyors. They're leaning the rod, or they're not paying attention to the rod being straight up and down.
They conveyed that to you?
Huh?
They conveyed that to you?
They conveyed that to me.
Or there's a car parked on top
or there's a car parked up on top of it, or there's a dumpster in the way, or there's something in the way, and they're just trying to get the shot.
Chamfered little corners.
Yeah, chamfered little corner, or maybe the piece is broken off, okay? There can be a whole host of reasons why, okay? Maybe they're picking up the inside metal cover instead of the outside concrete cover, okay? So I've actually talked to 2 surveyors and seen that they'll actually pick up the inside cover on a couple of the corners, these 2, and the outside corner on these 2, okay? So that's why it leads to being not square, okay? So draw the things square, okay? We know what the structures look like. We have the details already on the sidebar menus. Go ahead and pull them down. I was having trouble with my machine last night, and I was trying to rewrite it, and I think I forgot these. So actually draw them in, and draw the substructures, and then once you have the substructures, draw the way the substructure is meant to be connected to. In other words, in each of these substructures, there's what's called a what? Anybody? Knockouts, okay? So the knockouts are located in a particular place based on the structure. So in a 3316, they're in where? On the edges, okay? In a 3326, there's actually 8 sets of knockouts, okay? There's 2 on each side, all right? So the idea is, even if you have a paint mark, okay? Because I've seen paint marks where you got paint marks and maybe this is driving me nuts. Okay, so here's something that actually came up square. It's a transformer, and you got paint marks that go up to it, but they don't come in where the knockout is. Why is that? Okay, it could be that maybe they're coming up at a weird angle. Could be a lot of different things, but know that most of the time when you're connecting to a 3316 and you've got paint marks that you've drawn the 3316, but you've got paint marks on the other side of the 3316, maybe there's lines that go past it, maybe drawn it 180 degrees out back, and those lines that actually go past are actually going through the 3316. Okay, so keep in mind when you're drawing things aren't always, what's shown on the surface. Okay, so what's the minimum radius for a distribution line? 25 feet. Why do I get lines drawn at angle points? Okay, I'll get a 90-degree drawn, and it'll be in the drawing that way. And I'm going, okay, well, there should be a radius there. Okay, what's the minimum radius for a telephone line? 15 feet. Okay, for a house service, it's 5 feet. For a sewer line, how tight can you go with some of these PVC lines? What's the tightest radius you can get with, say, an 8-inch PVC?
200.
More like about 500. Okay? So those don't actually radius. What about a storm drain pipe? Can you radius a storm drain pipe? What's the tightest radius you can get? Well, you can get a radius. What's the tightest radius? Nope, it's 22 and a half. 22 and a half. And that's 5-foot sections, 5-degree bend, special order pipe, okay? So typically we're not designing that, okay? So a lot of the developers, and here's where you have to look at the plans. Was the plan done by a developer or was it done by a city, okay? If it was done by a city, you're gonna have stuff that's nice and square, comes out to a clean out in the center of the street. It's done by a developer, you're gonna have what I call spaghetti, and it's gonna go into the inlet and out of the inlet and keep on going with no clean out. Why is that? It's cheaper. Don't have to pay for the intermediate structure. Okay? So there's the difference. You'll see plans that are in, and I didn't get a good copy of the plans, but there's copies of, you know, municipality stuff in this research as well. Let's see. Survey, time cards, utility research. Here's you have to download the facility book. So one of those things that they'll do is, how many people know what the gatebook for the city of San Diego is? There's a couple here. So for those that raise their hand, what is it?
Record, water and record utilities.
Okay. So for the city of San Diego, they actually have a gatebook, and you'll get copies of those pages of the gatebook in which they have the pipes and the details connecting, so that when you see let's go.
We should still have those gatebooks here too.
We still do have a couple of old copies. So when you see stuff like this, okay, you'll know that maybe there's a T here and a T here, you know, and there are two T's back to back, okay? And you'll know that those water lines aren't drawn correctly, and that the water line should actually come in over here to this, and that this one offsets and goes through there. Or maybe this is a 16-inch and this is a butterfly valve, okay? All those options are possible, but you don't know until you actually look it up, okay? Now, this is where it would help if you said RW intersection all butterfly valves, okay? That way somebody would look at that and go, oh, that's not wrong, okay? Are there any questions? Yeah.
So for stuff like that, when your alignment is, let's say, 10 feet away, how much investigation should you do time-wise to like figure that kind of stuff out?
If you're within 10 feet of the alignment, you should be doing a fair amount of investigation. Now, does that investigation have to happen at your 30%? No, not necessarily. But if it becomes a point at which somebody says, oh yeah, let's bury it because we got the room over here. Well, what goes along with valves?
Rust blocks.
Rust blocks. Okay.
Yeah. And then obviously, if you, once you're kind of like in utility mode, and then you have your alignment, but then all of a sudden your alignment changes like a year later, and then you'll forget what's
Right.
going on there.
Right. Exactly. And that's why you put the notes in the file.
Yep.
Okay? Write the notes in a construction layer. You know, it's not going to plot, but at least somebody can turn that on and go, oh, that's what's going on. Okay? Now, if everybody were to write this in a construction note layer that said construction notes utilities, okay, so it was kind of universal, then everybody would know to go turn that layer on instead of, utilities input at such and such a date, or utilities, gas utilities, or, there's 10 layers that you have to turn on. Put all your notes in there. And just have them in, spread them out, you know, you can put a leader down to it, okay? Don't make the color so obnoxious that everybody has to turn it off to actually look at it. Orange works, okay? A dark orange, dark burnt umber works, okay? Something that will fade in the background, okay? 40 works, okay? That's why the construction note layer and the construction line work layer is the color it is, because it kind of fades back, okay? And also no plot. Now, one of the things you can do is you can plot it when somebody questions, oh, well, you know, where did this utility information comes from? You can just turn it on and show it, okay? So that'll help. Looking at the utility information that the surveyors collect, believe it or not, some of them actually collect a good amount, okay? They will have details on manholes, okay? But what's one way to make them get that information? Tell them to collect it, okay? If you don't tell them to collect it, they're not going to, right? Okay? You tell them to just go get paint marks. Where are they going to go? They're just going to go get paint marks. Okay? But if you tell them to go get the paint marks and any other surface features that happen to be around, that's a little different information, isn't it? Okay? So you have to be clear on what it is you're asking the surveyors to do. Okay? And know that if you're just stringing through paint marks for a 24-inch gas line or a 24-inch water line, and the water line kind of goes like this, isn't the water line straight? Does the paint mark directly over the center of the pipe? Is it close? Yeah, maybe. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're looking at paint marks, okay? And you're looking at the plans, and you're saying, okay, it goes straight, but it only goes straight to a point, and then it angles, okay? But I got paint marks that are kind of on each side of it. Well, that validates you, because if it's on each side, it's a 24-inch main. They could be at the side of the main. It could be, you know, anywhere in that 24-inch space, and it's still good.
If you've got the paint marks plus some as-built data that has like line and curve data tables,
Yes.
that's obviously
The line and curve data tables are what you should be entering it by, okay? But the paint marks should validate it, all right? Now, if you've got a 2-inch gas line, and it's kind of going all over the place, guess what? It's going all over the place, all right? And they tend to, but especially if it's poly, all right? So, does everybody know what a poly gas line is when I say poly? Because I use terms all the time. High density polyethylene, usually the orange pipe. However, lately it's been yellow and black pipe. So the terms that everyone uses, okay? If someone uses a term that you don't recognize, ask what it is, okay? So when I say, you know, the water lines and SRCW, what does that mean? Guess what? He's pretty damn close.
But they change like depending on what plans you're looking at, like some of it's SCLW, some of it's like there's another variation.
Right, but water lines, you know, what's MLC and M, or MLC and C? Mortar coated and lined, okay? So when it's mortar coated and lined and it's steel line, how thick do you think that coating is? How thick? Depends on the size of the pipe, but typically For a 16 inch, it's an inch and a half. Okay? For a 24 or 36 inch, closer to 2 inches. Okay?
So that's like,
So that when you're drawing the outside of a pipe, okay, the pipe's 4 inches bigger than you think it is. Okay? For a 36 inch. For a 36 inch storm drain, how thick is a RCP? Guesses?
42.
Closer to 42. More accurate. Okay? It's actually, some of the wall thicknesses get as heavy as 4 inches, but it depends on what strength the pipe actually is. Okay, when I say deload, does everybody know what that means?
say what?
Deload. I'm saying it's a RCP pipe, and it's a deload of 2,000. What does that mean?
The loading dirt of the pipe.
It's that'll fracture it to 1/100th on a three point bearing test. But essentially, that's how strong the pipe is. It also alludes to how thick the wall is. Okay, it's a little heavier wall. So for an 18-inch RCP with 2,000 deload, because that's the minimum they make now. Okay, the wall thickness is not 2.5 inches. It's more like closer to 3. So know the standards, and if you don't know the standards, look them up. Quick Google search, or ask someone. There's the regional standards. You just Google search San Diego regional standards, and boom, it'll pop up. Okay. The regional standards are a good place to look. For inlets that are typical regional standard inlets, how much bigger is the inlet box, or the, let's say, the junction box, bigger than the storm drain size itself? 6 inches on each wall. So that means that it's a foot bigger than the pipe. If the pipe's coming in askew, does that mean a 36 inch fits in an A4? No, it's modified. It'll be an A5 or an A6. Okay. What's the biggest size for a D9 type A structure? An A8. Somebody says A10. The details don't go that high. They actually have to design it. Okay. I've done as big as an A12. Okay. Sometimes you have a call for it, but you have to design it. There'll be a plan sheet that shows the dimensions of it.
What about steel and backfill? Sorry.
Okay, so that's a controlled strength, controlled low strength mix. Okay, and so what it's intended to do, it's a thermal backfill, and it's intended to release the heat better than, say, concrete or just a backfill.
Or would it be, because it's almost like a compacted low strength?
It's just like dirt. It's low strength. It's only like 100 to 300 psi.
So would it be shown in asphalt?
Not typically. It'll be shown in the typical trench section, but is that something I want to see on the profile? Not normal. I want to see encasement. Okay, and typically when we go have them pothole, Stephen, what's my pet peeve about encasements? I'm gonna put you on the spot.
I'm not calling out the standard, but
No. If I'm going under, and you call out the top of the encasement, what good is that? Call out the bottom if you're going under an encasement. If you're going over it, call out the top. Okay? It's probably best to call out both. Okay? In SXPQ, there was a 7-foot encasement we had to go around. Guess what was drawn on the plans? 2 feet. Okay. That's because somebody didn't check the pothole report, check that it was 7 feet thick. Okay? So doing this checklist, checking off all those items, okay, is something I want you to do before you submit it to BQA QC. Okay? Now, do you have to do all those steps all the time? No, but it's a good thought process to go through. Okay? For those that haven't done this process all that much, it's a good guide. I tried to be as complete as I could. I think I'm missing reclaimed water off of there. But essentially, the idea behind this whole class is that think about what it is you're drawing. Okay? If you're drawing and you see a backflow preventer or a symbol for a backflow preventer, and you're drawing a water line, how's the water get to the backflow preventer? Okay? There's a lateral. Okay? There's usually a standard that covers that lateral because that lateral is usually greater than 6 inches. And the backflow preventer, you've got a picture of it because the surveyor took a picture of it. It shows a 10-inch backflow. Oh, there's a 10-inch lateral there. You've got a 10-inch water line. So there should be a 10-inch backhoe out in the street. Okay? If it's done per standard. Now, if there isn't a valve there, that doesn't mean valve isn't there. It just means it's been covered over by an AC overlay. Okay? So you can tell the surveyors to go out there with a metal detector and try and find it. Okay? So this is all to make you think about what it is you're drawing. Okay? So don't draw manhole to manhole to manhole. Okay? Because the manhole isn't typically representative of what's underneath. Okay? Telephone manholes. When you got 2 manholes right together, what does it mean? It's a big box. Okay? Because they have double access. And if you get fiber optic and telephone running like really close together, parallel, in and out of a manhole, it means they probably both go through the manhole. Okay? So again, knockouts in the manhole, entering the manhole, exiting the manhole. Okay? Why is it important to draw the underground structures? And then let's just say, for the sake of argument, we're only 5 feet off that telephone line as we're going by that structure. What happened?
The structure is probably bigger.
The structure's bigger, and we're either scraping the side of the structure or the structure's in our way. Okay? So keep those kinds of things in mind. The city of San Diego lately has been asking us to give dimensions anytime we're closer than 10 feet to the water line or sewer line. Okay? Now, can we be closer than that? Sure. We can be up to 3 feet edge to edge. Okay? But do we want to be that close? Not typically. Now, a lot of times we'll have to go deeper than the water, sewer, or gas, okay, to get under it. What happens if I'm right next to a sewer manhole and I have to go deeper than the sewer manhole?
Collapse.
Undermine the structures.
You can undermine the structure.
Establish your dimensions side to side, right? Not from center to center.
Not center to center, side to side. Now, if you're setting a manhole or setting a structure, okay, you probably should be dimensioning from the edge of that structure to the sewer manhole or to the sewer line, okay?
Not always is that manhole on center of that pipeline.
Correct.
That can be offset.
It can be offset, it can be a lot of things, and that's where it comes into having the notes and saying, these are eccentric manholes, 5-foot diameter, for the sewer. And, it's per standard S1. Okay? That would at least tell you that they're eccentric, but they're eccentric in line. Okay? Any other questions?
Just a comment. In some parts of this country, I don't know if it happens ones out here, but they'll lay the valve on its side so they don't have to dig a hole as deep. So the valve might be sticking out from the line, but a foot or two, depending on how big the valve is.
There are side-operated valves, and that's in gas, usually in the gas arena, and the operators are actually on the side of the large mains. So when you're dealing with an 18, 24, 30-inch gas main, and you see a valve stem on the side, or you see two inline and one kind of offset from each other, it means it's a side-operated valve, but these are blow-ups, okay? So when you see three gas valves in a row, one's the operator for the gas valve, and the other two are blow-offs for each side of the gas valve. Okay? Now, if there are other things that are like that, you know, Kay's a gas line designer. Philip, he designs water, sewer, electrical. You know, Rick's done a lot of design. You know, so and I, you know, Joseph, you do more of the gas and the electrical.
I do the gas. I've done Webb pipelines in the past too.
Okay, so if you have questions, ask these guys. You know, that have done it a little bit more often than you. You know, which way it should be. Okay, you can always ask me. I'll give you an attempt at an answer because I don't always. You're gonna have to forgive the person you're asking because they don't always have access to the information that you have. Okay, so when you're asking them a question, kind of say, I have this plan, and they're both different. Okay, which one should I follow? Okay, 9 times out of 10, it's the one that built it. Okay, it's the answer you're going to get. All right. Because if another engineer interprets that location to be a different place, that's his interpretation, not the one that actually built it. Okay? And a lot of times you don't know what that's based on. Okay? Maybe he based it on a plan he found. Okay? But he didn't actually go get the plan that actually built it. Okay? That happens all the time. All right, any other questions?
Thanks, Mark.
No problem.
Thanks.
Huh?
We have
Yes.